Alright, hey there everybody. The two-part movie has somehow returned. Somehow, the two-part movie has returned. And this time we actually saw the conclusion of one of the 22-part movies that are halfway over. We saw the conclusion of Dune. Book 12, Dune. So wait,
chronologically.
12th chronologically.
Or something.
Or whatever.
Eighth
I just know it's 12
something.
because audible.com.
Calls it like part 12?
They go hard chronological. Even with the Star Wars book, they go full chronological.
Dune
So they
part
do the
12.
same thing with Dune. So this is Dune Part 12, Part 2, which is the first Dune. The unadaptable movie has been adapted by Dennis Villeneuve, the man who created Sicario, Arrival, Blade Runner 2049, and Dune Part 1.
Yep, those are some movies he made.
So Aiden, tell us the plot of Dune Part 1. I feel like
Dune part 2.
whatever. Dune Part 2.
That's a little low.
What's that glare?
What glare?
Oh, is that the refrigerator corner? Yeah, it is.
The wall.
It's got a little bit of refrigerator in there.
Yeah, we'll fix it next.
Whatever.
Dune part 2 follows up from Dune part 1. Paul Atreides has joined up with the Fremen, and he wages a war against, pretty much everyone else. But namely, their goal is to destroy all the spice miners so that they can regain control of the planet, and eventually Paul will be able to avenge his family and step up into his role as the Messiah of Dune, TM, and lead the world into a peaceful age. And it features every famous person ever, with Zendaya as his girlfriend, and Rebecca Ferguson as his mom, and Austin Butler as a bald incel.
Dave Bautista also
Who has
bald
sex
himself.
with Leia Seydoux, who's in 2 scenes. And various others. Anya Taylor-Joy in the movie for 10 seconds. Christopher
Thanos.
Walken. Thanos. Drax.
Among
Among others.
Poe Dameron, as you might remember, has been killed in the first movie. He will not be back.
Yep, he's dead. So is Aquaman, but Aquaman will be back in the next one. Don't worry.
Phew!
And other stuff will happen. And Florence Pugh is also here, and she plays her iconic role of woman fucks powerful man. And there's worms. There's big worms, really big worms. Connor, what'd you think of Dune Part 2?
That is good. It paid off. Dune Part 1. I was kind of not the kindest Dune Part 1. I didn't hate Dune Part 1. I thought it was a very well made movie that was 100% set up for Part 2 to be an action filled spectacle, which is exactly what Dune Part 1 is. I gave it 2.5 stars on Letterboxd, which I feel vindicated in. This movie is a 4-hour or a 3-hour second part that's almost at an end action. At least
Yep.
they skipped all of the setup, which admittedly is far more boring than the desert politics, space and desert politics of this movie. Timothy Chalamet is Space Jesus, or
Space Muhammad.
yeah, I was gonna say possibly Space Muhammad. In that he lands in space and there's a lot of Jesus imagery, a la Man of Steel. At one point he dies and he comes back to life and everyone's like, well fuck dude, he's Jesus. See, his story, his arc specifically is more like Jesus
Kind of.
than Muhammad.
Yeah.
But he's they're like drinking the blue liquid which makes their eyes glow blue and they're fighting, and and there's a lot of fighting scenes, a lot of very spectacular imagery. It's very well shot. But the movie, I don't know. There's something kind of held me back from the core of the movie. Because I almost would have preferred one Ben-Hur-esque 4-hour epic rather than 2 3-hour movies, because the first 3 hours is a beautiful waste of time. I mean, it's like setup. Like, all we have to know is that Paul Atreides' family is wiped out systematically by Christopher Walken and Dave Bautista and his papa. And they're all hanging out in space, and then he gets stuck on the same planet and meets Zendaya. That could have all been an hour, and then this movie could have happened, and you got one really good 4-hour movie. Instead, you got 2 half movies, and the first movie is still incredibly boring setup, and this movie is very fun end-to-end action, very interesting. The space politics and side dealings happen. Paul of Atreides kind of rise to biblical dominance and fall to the dark side of the Force. It kind of happens all in this movie. The entire character arc of Timothée Chalamet's character. Too many famous people, too, to an annoying extent. Where I'm like, oh, it's Florence Pugh, but now instead of her playing the mistress, she's the wife, and Zendaya's gonna be the mistress. And Timothée Chalamet's fine, because he wasn't really famous until Dune.
Anya Taylor-Joy is the most egregious
Anya Taylor-Joy is a pointless cameo. Because the problem is, by the time they get around to the third Dune, where she's an adult, that character, then why hire Anya Taylor-Joy? It's probably going to be a 2-part Dune 2. So we're looking at 8 years before that. And then how do you make prepubescent looking Timothée Chalamet look like he's 50? Unless you recast him and have Anya Taylor-Joy there. There's many excessive amounts of issues with that. But then it's oh, Thanos, hi Thanos, and Elvis is fucking, now he's a guy. Elvis is kind of fine too, because he's kind of coming up with Timothée Chalamet there. I prefer the fresh actors, and then you have the Emperor, who's Christopher Walken. This is a little much. I wish there were less stars. But I feel half the reason you have Anya Taylor-Joy here is so you can throw her name on the star-studded cast in the trailer, you know? Yeah. When it pops up, it's Austin Butler, Timothée Chalamet, Dave Bautista, Thanos, Anya Taylor-Joy. Just add her in there. See, that was kind of annoying. It's give some unknown people a shot or something. Because half the time I'm watching this movie, and I don't remember Zendaya's name. I should, because it's a 3-hour movie. But every time I saw her, I said, oh, Zendaya's sad now. Zendaya's happy. Zendaya's in love with Paul of Atreides. I can buy Timothée Chalamet as Paul of Atreides, but I just know Zendaya as Zendaya because she's so hyper famous. Now Timothée Chalamet is hyper famous, but it's because of this, you know?
Yeah.
Which can't really be helped. And I just know Timothée Chalamet as a guy who shows up in French Dispatch for 20 seconds and
to be fair, I think
Paul
most
Atreides.
people in this movie give good performances.
The performances are solid.
Exceptions.
I think everybody was pretty good in it. I can't think of many people that sucked, but it's oh, man, give some of those character actors a chance. Dave Bautista's even kind of fine. I wouldn't mind a few famous people, but eventually it becomes headache-inducing. At least they didn't have Poe Dameron running around being Poe Dameron as the king. He's somehow I'm the king of Atreides. So that was kind of annoying, but the effects were really good.
Yeah, this
the sandworm stuff, and it's where were these effects on every other Warner Brothers movie? Because every other one looks like total dog shit. Yep. So the fact that they pulled off some really impressive effects and actually gave a shit, they want Dennis Neville hasn't made Warner Brothers a lot of money. They've teamed up with him a lot of times to make flop after flop. So I think they're finally happy they courted him in. They're big budget award their crown jewel movies, like the Kubrick movies, which were like big budget. I mean, Kubrick kind of was able to make money back in the day, but they want this guy to be the new Kubrick, which is fair. So they're putting a lot of fucking money into it, and everybody wants to be in these movies, and Warner Brothers is just like, cast everybody famous.
Yep. They did do that.
And I feel like this duology of films will be remembered for a long time. I feel like watching them back to back.
If they pull off Messiah, then the trilogy will be remembered.
I feel like if I watch them all in one, or like part 1 and 2 together,
as one mega movie,
as one like 5-hour mega movie, 5.5 hours, whatever, then it would be more. I feel like I could appreciate.
Yeah, I think
it's kind of hard. I could appreciate part 1 more, but part 1 is still like
the first part's all set up, and then you don't get the payoff immediately, which feels weird. And then like if you just watch part 2 alone, a lot of like the background elements are kind of fuzzy, so it's kind of weird.
Yeah, neither movies stand on their own at all, which is the problem with 2-part movies, and surely going to be something that I have a problem with on Fast X.
Mission
Across
Impossible.
the Spider-Verse, Mission Impossible. What else is 2-part?
There's so many 2-parts that I'm forgetting them. Spider-Verse, Mission Impossible, Fast X.
Fast X has no chance of being good. The first part was so shit. Mission Impossible and Across the Spider-Verse are at least good movies that have second parts coming that I can look forward to. Fast X is hilarious because they're like the next one will come out in 1 year. And now Fast X 2 has like no concrete release date, like 2025 presumably.
Yeah, it's a mess.
Kind of embarrassing. Because they're trying to figure out a way to end the franchise, but not actually end the franchise. Like, they're going to be like, Fast and Furious is over, but Vin Diesel and everyone else is probably going to get solo movies. Then they'll come together in a movie called like Fast and Furious Family. And they'll be like, this isn't the main installment. It does feature all of the main characters, but rather than a numbered entry, it's called Family.
Fast Avengers.
Yeah, it'll be the Avengers. It'll just be called Family. With the tagline, you can have any beer you want as long as it's Corona. Cheers, Vinny.
You can have any beer you'd like, as long as it's family.
I don't know. I thought it was a really good movie. It was the shit. I think what would have made Dune Part 1 and 2 a 5-star movie instead of a really boring yet impressive movie and a really decent movie without any setup was just to make one like epic long movie and be like, Warner Brothers is gonna be 4.5 hours long. You're gonna have to deal with that and make that the gimmick, you know, like the return of the epic. I also feel like that'd give a better chance of like Dune standing on its own as
make
a long
this
term.
motherfucker a Lawrence of Arabia epic.
That's what I'm saying. Fucking throw in an intermission at the end of when he meets Zendaya, and then keep that shit going. You can take a potty break or two. Because I wouldn't mind an hour and a half setup. This movie should have been like an investment, but first off, for probably budget, because they wanted to double dip. Yeah. So for monetary reasons, they wanted to split it into 2. And 2, because
it's very hard to.
I think theaters would do it, but I think theaters would be pissed, and especially during COVID, you couldn't just drop a half-finished movie, or you couldn't drop Dune during COVID. So it makes sense. They also wanted to hedge their bets because there was no guarantee we were actually going to get the second half. It wasn't announced till like 2 months after it wasn't fully greenlit. Like that was the plan, but if it was like a turbo flop, we would have just had a really awkward Dune adaptation.
If it was a turbo flop, just Dune Part 1.
Actually, COVID might have saved it because what's making this movie a super hype train is that everybody watched Dune later on HBO Max and said, damn, I wish I saw that in theaters when nobody saw it in theaters during COVID. And there would be no hype train if they just hard dropped this movie, or hard dropped. Sure. That's part of it, I think. Because the first Dune, I don't think made money, so this one kind of has to make money for the both of them.
I mean, they've been
But they
market pushing
probably-
it and it's popping.
I mean, everybody wants it. They made the AMC flashlight, and they paid SNL to embrace the flashlight jokes and be like, "We're fucking the Dune flashlight."
The
Isn't
Dune
that
popcorn
funny?
bucket.
I like how SNL just steals jokes off of like Facebook.
Yeah.
They're
What else did they
like
do?
2-week-old Facebook memes end up being SNL's bait
Yeah, but they
2
were-
weeks later, and the same people that made up the jokes on Facebook. Yeah, you repackage them with the Keenan Keel or whatever.
Repackage them for grandma and grandpa with the fucking Lady Ghostbusters.
Pretty much. Anyways, like, you know, good movie. I think, again, perhaps I'll have to take a day and just immerse myself in both parts of Dune and then kind of review it as one product. Maybe I'll do that as like
with the books.
Maybe I'll do that as a video. I don't think I'm gonna audible out all 24 Dune books.
No, absolutely not. The only two you need are Dune and Dune Messiah, honestly.
I feel like
All of the other ones are...
perhaps I'll do a mega video on Dune 1 and 2 as one cohesive project and try to just look at it as one long movie. But the problem with these 2-part movies is somebody who's an amateur film critic, as is myself.
We're semi-pro. We make some money.
We are semi-pro. The AdSense checks hit every 21st of whatever. We don't make money reviewing movies. We make money off of Pokemon videos and hottest Pokemon videos. And we used to make money off of Scooby-Doo being a drug addict.
Yeah, until someone got pissed about that.
Yeah, someone's like, "Fuck you, guy, I'm gonna report you to YouTube," and 2 minutes later, now my video's restricted and went from like 1,000 views every 2 days. That video was on the come up. It started
That video
getting
was
like some
climbing.
serious...
And
It went from like 10,000 to 25,000 in like a month. I'm
some
like, dude,
parent
this is...
put their toddler in front of the iPad and then it came up and they reported
saw
it and
it, yeah,
they
this-
nuked us.
Yeah, that sucked. Watch Scooby-Doo Generation of Drug Addicts video. It's one of my crown jewels. My normie friends like those videos and don't want to watch me talk about movies for 30 minutes or video games or whatever. But anyways, Aiden, what did you think of Dune Part 2?
It's great. I love Dune. I read the book a long time ago for the first time when I was in high school or maybe right after high school. It's very good book, and I read some amount of the sequels. I don't remember how many. There's a certain point where you just say, okay, I can't do this anymore. They get increasingly bad, even the ones written by Frank Herbert. They get weird. The final book Frank Herbert wrote is about a worm trying to kill himself. But Dune Messiah is my favorite book. It's really good, and I think it will be an incredible movie. I don't know if it'll be 1 part or 2, but I'm very looking forward to the Dune Messiah adaptation because it is a hell of a book. On to this movie, Dune Part 2. Well, I am disappointed in the return of the 2-part movie, which is something I have not kept secret, as it affected my opinion of Mission Impossible, a franchise I am deeply in love with, and it affected my impression of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which is a movie that is fantastic besides the fact that it's half a movie. Dune Part 2 is fantastic payoff for the first. It is gorgeous. It's gorgeous. Denis Villeneuve is very good at making good-looking movies. He works with brilliant cinematography people, and the effects on this movie are mind-blowing. The final war, the final battle, looks fucking incredible. Pretty much everything in this movie looks incredible. There's a lot more action in this one, a lot more pretty much everything happens in this one. The first one's a lot of setup. The second one, you see a lot of things. There's a really big character arc throughout this movie. Character arc of sorts, where our protagonist slowly morphs into some kind of bizarre tyrant. And Dune Messiah, which is being adapted, it's confirmed to be adapted into a movie some point in the future, deals with the fallout of his morph into a tyrant. And that's going to be incredible, but yeah, it's there's this really kind of slow burn aspect to it as kind of this honest but reluctant hero slowly morphs into someone who has so much foresight about everything that they kind of inadvertently end up as this controlling presence. It's a really like intense and interesting and weird and unpleasant but fascinating story about power and purpose and faith, and it's incredible. The action's incredible. Pretty much every actor in this movie is incredible, even though there's too many celebrities. The CGI is top notch. They managed to adapt it. They did it. They pulled it together. It does occasionally. I think there's parts that kind of bump into the problem that the first movie had more, where the book is very hard to adapt because there's a lot of politics and talking and people thinking really hard. This movie has a lot less of that, but especially in like the first third, you sometimes bump into problems with the medium where the story isn't entirely compatible with movies. But right. I think that the effort to actually adapt that story in an interesting way comes together, and it's not done. It's very obvious. This movie, the original Dune, makes it less obvious that it's a cliffhanger. This movie definitely plays up the cliffhanger aspect for the eventual Dune Messiah, which is fine. I think that's a good decision if they're committed to doing Dune Messiah, and it will definitely pay off when we get to that movie. But as it stands, it's a fantastic adaptation, a fantastic movie. Part 1 is a little rougher to sit through because it's so much setup. But watching these together, I'm sure will be quite the fucking 6-hour experience. It's everything you could possibly want from an adaptation as a Dune fan who's read 6 of the 400 books, or 7, or I think I've definitely read some of the ones.
I mean, if you just read the Frank Herbert ones, you can still be a fan. It's kind of like just watching the George Lucas Star Wars.
I think I've read.
I've
read at least 2 or 3 of the non-Frank Herbert ones, and they're bad. They're bad. They're bad. But the Frank Herbert ones also get bad. So, what are you gonna do? I want to see God Emperor of Doom. I want to see the worm kill himself.
Maybe they'll make that a TV show since it takes place in the future.
HBO Max original 8-hour show where a worm tries to commit suicide.
Yeah, I mean, they're making apparently a fill-in TV show of some kind. I don't know if it's based on anything.
It was one of the prequel books or something.
Dune Prophecy 2024 is an upcoming science blah blah blah.
Is it based on the
Dune
universe.
It takes place 10,000 years before the novel.
Why?
And Denis Villeneuve's movie. For 10,000 years.
What?
Mark Strong's in it. I like Mark Strong. He's a Warner Brothers studio actor.
Stanley Tucci, his evil twin.
Oh, I thought Stanley Tucci was also in it. Got really
That'd be
excited.
funny.
Diane, Emily, and John.
Wait, is this based on one of the bad books?
Let's see. I don't think so. I think this is just. I think they're just like, we'll do the two that are doable, and then we're just gonna make a bunch of Dune shit outside.
I mean, you could probably.
During the 2016 acquisition of the television and film rights to the Dune franchise, they wanted to make the two-part Legendary Television ordered a series in 2019 being a spin-off.
Like, I don't know, like,
They
Anya
decided-
Taylor-Joy being in this movie implies that there's at least some consideration to eventually make Children of Dune. But Children of Dune is also not a very good book.
Well, they've already
I
adapted
don't
Children of Dune, so I don't know why they
Yeah,
should...
there's like a BBC miniseries or some shit.
Yeah, BBC miniseries of that, and
Yeah, it's not very good.
yeah, I imagine the BBC miniseries.
No, I
like,
haven't watched the BBC miniseries. I mean, the book Children of Dune is not
Oh.
very good.
I've heard like the BBC miniseries is like accurate, but
James
It's a-
McAvoy's in the BBC Children of Dune as one of the kids, as Paul's son,
there you go.
he's the guy who turns into the giant
The
worm
worm.
who kills himself.
James McAvoy doesn't manage to do that.
He doesn't do that in
the
the miniseries, I don't think, because that's in 2 books from them. But yeah, it's weird.
I think James McAvoy would come back for
to play the giant worm.
he could be like older because it'll be like
himself.
20 years before they get to that book. So James McAvoy's like 60, you know, and he's like, I want to be a worm, and then then becomes a worm and starts swimming around in the Dune Sea. He's like, if only I was a Dune, TM.
If only someone would kill me so I could stop being a worm.
So it's in continuity, not to the Denis Villeneuve movies, but the BBC movies.
Yeah.
Or it's canon to both, you know?
It
Both
could be
and
canon
neither.
to
Both
What if
and neither.
Denis Villeneuve is like, Children of Dune's already been done as good as it can be? Don't skip it. Warner Brothers
Skip it.
re-releases the BBC series.
With expanded
They put it on
CGI
HBO.
and they green screen Zendaya into it.
No, Zendaya's dead in that one.
No, I know, but she's like CGI.
Aquaman comes back to life.
Aquaman's like, I'm gonna be your trainer and friend, buddy.
Yeah.
I like how Dave Bautista and Jason Momoa, the two worst actors in superhero filmmaking, got hired for Dune.
Dave Bautista.
Here's the thing. They're the most charming. They're the two most charming superhero actors. Because I'm like, Dave Bautista and Jason Momoa. I don't even care that they're terrible.
I would have said that. Dave Bautista was surprisingly good in the M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Yeah.
He was surprisingly good.
Jason Momoa sucks
Jason
in
Momoa,
both of the Aquaman movies,
He's
but
bad.
he both sucks in both of the Aquaman movies, and he's the best part of
Like,
both of the Aquaman movies.
If I could go to the bar with Jason Momoa, that would be the happiest day of my life. I think that would be
and
the
Dave
most
Bautista,
badass.
I feel like it'd be fun
Either
because
one.
they'd be like crushing peanuts
Either
in their
one.
hand and shit.
But Dave Bautista has some amount of range, which is more than you can say for Jason Momoa.
Yeah, well, Jason Momoa played a bunch of angry like Vikings like characters.
Yeah.
Then they're like, you gotta act in Aquaman. You can't just be angry, scream, and run at guy with sword. You have to say dialogue. And he's like, I don't really. It's kind of like not something I've typically done, but I'm willing to give it a shot.
And here we are. But yeah. Yeah, Dune Part 2. Watch these movies together or rewatch Dune Part 1.
Yeah, I haven't really had the privilege of any time in these last like 3 weeks, so
If
I
I
didn't
had
get a
time,
refresher
I definitely
course.
would've.
I feel like the ideal way is literally plop your ass down on the couch and put in the first 4K for Dune, watch Dune in its entirety in 4K,
And then immediately go to the theater.
get up. Well, yes, I was gonna say, or immediately go to the theater, but I was gonna say stand up, maybe take a quick piss, pretend it's like an intermission, throw in
Yeah.
part 2, slap the disc tray shut, and watch part 2.
Currently, what you do is drive to the theater immediately after.
You watch it on your you park in the theater parking lot. you watch Dune Part 1 on your fucking telephone.
Yeah, David Lynch would be proud.
David Lynch.
But yeah.
David Lynch would be like, "That's not cinema."
My summation is, Dune and Dune Part 2 are great. Dune Messiah, I'm very, very excited for because
Warner Brothers.
Dune Messiah is going to be insane.
Let Dennis Noville just do like a 5-hour Dune Messiah movie.
Dune Messiah,
Just let him do it.
I would love that. Dune Messiah is just the fallout of Paul Atreides declaring jihad on the rest of the galaxy, and it's a mess, and it's horrible and miserable, and it's going to be so good. I'm very excited. Connor, would you recommend Dune Part 2 in a scenario where you've seen Dune Part 1 to save us that part?
I wasn't gonna say that. I was just gonna say, yeah, I'd recommend it. I've already said that multiple times, but it's true. So now I have to explain. You set me up. It's true. So watch Dune Part 1 first, and then watch this, and it might be more satisfying. Again, I mean, I said it all in the review. I think it's a very good movie. I think, I've seen a lot of like Letterboxd reviews comparing Denis Villeneuve to Kubrick.
To Stanley Tucci.
I think it's too early to tell that that's the case. But what I will say is this is a movie that has wide appeal. It's more action-packed than something like a Kubrick movie. But it takes a lot of cues trying to push the technology, make a cool-looking movie. It looks beautiful. It looks cool. The acting's good. It is something I could see garnering a following a la the Lord of the Rings trilogy or something, because people are going back to watch Dune now. And in 20 years, I could see Dune Part 1 and 2 having classic status amongst people.
I think they will.
But at this point, it's too early to tell, of course. But I think he stuck the landing. I said probably in my Dune Part 1 review, I don't fucking remember, but I said it needs a solid Part 2 for it all to come together. And he made a solid Part 2 and it came together. And I'm excited to watch Dune Part 1 and 2 as a coherent piece when it drops on 4K, because I will be attempting that marathon when I have some sort of time to do so. So Aiden, would you recommend Dune Part 2?
Yes, it's incredible. Get your Dune 1 refresher in, watch this movie.
Get your Dune
It's great.
Part 2 flashlight from AMC.
Get your Dune Part
Probably
2
sold out
flash-
at this point.
But yeah, it's great. We're in the dark, and bye.
Bye.